All right. Welcome to another edition of Blues Deluxe. This afternoon, it's my honor and pleasure to have Donna Gillespie with me. How are you?
I'm very fine, John. I'm extremely well. And Blues Deluxe sounds like a really good radio show. How long has it been going?
46 years.
Yay!
Yeah.
Great.
And
And that means
you've
you've
done
got good
radio
stuff.
too. You mentioned.
Yeah. My radio show was from 1990 till 2001. It was based in Vienna, and because I specialized in world music when nobody was really interested in that, but I also played blues. I was part of the world music jury, so we did the top 20 hits for, but you can't really compare a song that's recorded in, let's say, Lithuania to something that's been recorded in Colombia. So it's only the disc jockeys that could vote it in. But my love has always been blues. I love blues. It's real stuff. And I grew up in the 60s, and London was really a happening place for blues.
Well, let's talk about world music since you mentioned that.
Hmm.
How did you get involved with world music? I loved world music too, by the way.
Well, I've always, I mean, of course, in the 60s when I hung out with all the rock and roll musicians, but they were just musicians like Jimmy Page, who obviously went on to do Led Zeppelin. He played a lot of the guitars on my first album, which came out in 1964, 65. I'm very bad with numbers, John, so I may throw numbers all over the place, but I can't remember what I was doing then. Anyway, it was an album called Foolish Seasons, and we used to, Jimmy Page and I, would rush off to go and see somebody like Ustad Vilayat Khan, Indian music. Now it sounds silly now because everybody can see and hear everything. But back in the mid 60s, you couldn't even find a stick of incense. It was not very easy to find. So when anyone Indian came into town, we'd go off and listen to it. And, he was always pretty keen on the sitar. And I grew up listening to the Yardbirds. And they had a hit. One of their first hits used a sitar on it. So I always had a feel for Indian music, and then I've traveled a lot to Arab countries, countries that people don't go to any longer because it's considered too dangerous or too crazy. And I love the music there, and so that's how my love of it came. And then I've been going to India for years. I go every year, and I've done 10 albums now, in mostly in Sanskrit. It's a type of music called bhajans, and Sanskrit is not a language that you can't order up a cup of tea. It deals with slightly higher, loftier thoughts. But all of this kind of music that I've just mentioned, it's not really written down. It comes from the heart. It's a feel thing. And that's what I like about the blues, because very few blues musicians needed to and still don't need to actually read notes. They just have to play from the heart.
Feeling.
So
It's
I
feeling.
like music that comes from, yeah, with feeling, that comes from the heart. So that's the important thing for me.
So starting out, you weren't a blues singer. You as a young girl, you were singing all kinds of different types of music.
Well, I was a folk singer because, in 1964, 65, I couldn't afford a band. I didn't know how to even get a band together. Young kids are so much more informed now because I suppose you got this blasted internet. But in my day, you were lucky if you could find a record, one record. You really cherished an album and you kind of played it over and over again. And looked at the sleeve and read the sleeve notes, and unlike now when nobody gives a damn about anything really. So I started out as a folk singer because that's the only thing I could afford, which was a six-string guitar, which is all embryonic guitarists start on a cheapo Spanish guitar that costs, $5 somewhere or $3. And I just learnt the basic chords. And how I had the nerve to go out onto a stage and sing, I'll never know. But you got to learn somewhere. And I looked very good. I was kind of a big girl, you could say. So when I was 15, I probably looked about 18 or 19. I mean, I know that that's not so unusual now, But in those days, there weren't any girl singers doing what I was doing, certainly not in England. And the girls that did have hits in the charts, they were all kind of wearing nice little skirts and dresses and looked very wholesome. Whereas I was in a pair of jeans bursting out of a shirt with the top button undone, with a lot of hair and flashy, I was kind of rebellistic, mostly girl singers didn't go on TV shows wearing jeans and trousers, which I did. So that's how I kind of started. And I loved the blues, listened to the blues, but didn't know how to get a blues band together. I was given a contract, my first management contract, by a man called Giorgio Gamelski, who managed the Yardbirds. And I used to be at the famous Marquee Club every week listening to the group. And he once told me to get up on stage and sing, which I did with my Spanish guitar. And he said, you need lessons. He said, I'm going to ask Eric Clapton. Eric was the lead guitarist, obviously, with the Yardbirds, if he'll give you lessons. And Eric wrote me this incredible letter saying, yeah, I'm going to give you the lessons, but I've just got to do this tour, and I'll let you know when the tour is over, when I can come back and start the lessons. But of course, the tour was never over. They carried on touring, and I never got my lesson. And stupidly, the letter got thrown away between house moves, because it's over, it's 60 years ago plus. But his birthday is the same day as mine. I share my birthday with quite a few musicians, actually, for some strange reason.
That's good, though.
Yeah, it is good. So
So,
I started out as folk, and so my first two albums, okay, I was signed to Decca, which was a good label here in England. Although the first album came out in America on something called London Records, but it didn't come out in England. And the second album only came out in England, didn't come out in America, which was called Box of Surprises, and had a blues band as my backing called Savoy Brown.
yeah, I know them.
But in those days, nobody got any credits on the album sleeves either. It's only when a couple of companies have re-released my albums that they then put down Jimmy Page and Savoy Brown. Nobody cared about these things in those days.
Yep.
And I did a lot of things. I mean, I did a lot of session singing, but my main thing was songwriting. I always wanted to be a songwriter, and I started songwriting from the age of 11, actually. But to make extra money, I would do backing sessions, and myself and Elton John and another singer called David Byron, who was the lead singer of a group called Uriah Heep.
Yep.
We used to do all these sessions for a company that put out the top 20 hits. They were called Top of the Pops, and they were all the top 20 hits, but they were me, Elton, and David Byron singing the songs as if they were the hits, but they were copies. But it was so long ago, people didn't know the difference. And I think that the record companies did it because it was a way to get people to buy cheap albums with usually a sort of girl on the front falling out of a bikini, really tacky looking. But it was the 60s. And
It worked. It worked.
yes, apparently. Well, now you can find these albums. They're getting more and more rare to find, but people who have manic Elton John followers, they try and find them and work out who's singing on what track. I can't remember a lot of the tracks I sang on, and usually if you want to find these albums, they're found in cheapo charity shops going, for 20 cents almost, but they're going up in price.
Oh, yeah. They
Just
all
for
go up.
the cheesy album sleeves is worth it, for if nothing else.
So let's talk about your time with David Bowie.
Right. Well, I met him while going to the Marquee Club. I met him when I was 14. He was the support act with his group called the Manish Boys. He had very, very long yellow hair. It sounds, again, silly nowadays. People were banging on in the press about how the Beatles had long hair. The Beatles' hair hardly touched the back of the collars. David Bowie's hair, well, I knew him when he was still David Jones, but his hair went almost to his shoulders and bright lemon yellow. So one night I'm down at the Marquee Club and he came off stage and I'm standing at the back brushing my waist length hair. And he just comes up from behind me, takes the hairbrush out of my hand, carries on brushing and whispers in my ear, "Can I come home with you tonight?" And I said, yes, as one does. So I took him home. Obviously, I knew that I'd have to introduce him to my parents the next morning, which I did just before I ran off to school. And he left. And my father said, "Gosh, I thought that was a girl sleeping the night with you." But, you know, we always had a really good music relationship because I was writing songs, he was writing songs. We both wanted to make it in the business. And I had on my top floor where I was sort of out of the way in my parents' house, which was a big house in the center of London, I had a drum kit because I was having drum lessons. I had my own band and I was writing songs, and I had a couple of Spanish guitars, and he taught me chords and things and helped me, and we would hang out a lot together and always stayed really good friends. And something like his first hit was Space Oddity, and by this time I'd been moved to the basement of my parents' house because they wanted all this music out of the way and out of earshot. So I was down in the basement with my drums and my instruments. And David rang up and he said, "Listen, I'm just around the corner. I've just written a song half an hour ago. I think you should hear it. And I think it might be something special." 2 minutes later, he's on the door, and there he is. He comes in and plays Space Oddity to me. So we just remained very good friends. And then, of course, we had the same management company from 1970 till 1975.
Main man.
Main man indeed.
Tony DeFries.
He was amazing. I know a lot of people sort of put him down now, but what he did for Bowie was incredible. He took a lot of risks. He spent a lot of money. Sometimes it was Bowie's advance. We were both signed to RCA. It was a great, exciting time. I mean, Bowie was treated like DeFries always said, if you go through life first class, and everyone will think you are first class. So he put him and the Spiders from Mars in America for about 3 months. They only did about 8 gigs, but all that time they stayed in 5-star plus hotels doing interviews, and everyone just assumed he was a big star back in England, which he wasn't. But the scam, it wasn't really a scam, but the play acting paid off, and DeFries took out offices in Park Avenue. And Bowie wrote this song for me called Andy Warhol, which is on my Weren't Born a Man album. And he was my backing singer for that. And then I was able to reciprocate and sing on the Ziggy Stardust album. But we all had to move to America. David and his wife Angie were able to, and she was great in she really worked so hard on getting him up there. You know, everyone was all for David. You know, everyone wanted him to succeed because it was so obvious that he had a special talent. But I couldn't leave when they all left so long because I was the first Mary Magdalene in Jesus Christ Superstar on the London stage. So I was stuck doing 8 shows a week watching the crucifixion. But whereas I really wanted to go out to New York and hang with these guys, which I eventually then did, and we had a whale of a time. But if anyone really wants to know all that information, they ought to just buy my memoirs, which is called Weren't Born a Man, because I wrote it and it's got those kind of stories. And I took loads of Polaroids of Bowie when we were all living in it sounds bonkers now, we were all living in the Sherry Netherlands Hotel, running up huge bills, which of course DeFries was paying. But then, but you know, it all kind of started to, well, it's like I always say, it was a bit like a house of cards. It started to collapse. And I, by this time, was already wanting to do blues. And my second album, it's my 4th album, but my second album for Main Man was called Ain't Gonna Play No Second Fiddle, which was an old blues song from the 30s. And I knew I wanted to do blues more than anything. Although David himself started out doing blues, all the British big bands like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or the Stones or the Beatles, all of them, they all started with blues because it's 3 chords, 12 bars, and you put some hot guys up on stage. I mean, how can you go wrong in the 60s? I'm talking about the 60s, of course. And it's a great way to start off your music. And to do real blues is the basis of everything. It's the mother of, well, I don't have to tell this to you, John, but it's
Yep.
the mother of all music. You wouldn't have had your rock and roll or your jazz if you hadn't had the blues from the 1920s or earlier. So I like the old stuff, actually. But yeah, and I did more and more blues as I got older. When it came to about 1980, by this time, I'd done various kind of films chasing dinosaurs and things, wearing chamois leather. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these weird films that used to come out of England. They were called Hammer films. There was always a cave girl in it, and I was perfect casting. Basically, all you needed was a large cleavage and lots of hair, and I had plenty of that. And it was nice thing to do in between gigs. I mean,
Yep.
you kind of learn things. And David too was also doing films. I mean, I did a film called uh, Bad Timing with Art Garfunkel and directed by Nick Rogue. And Nick Rogue did Man Who Fell to Earth with Bowie. So we kind of had parallel lives, but he took to being in America probably more than I did, because when the Main Man company kind of collapsed in 1975 and lawsuits and lawyers were brought in, more on Bowie's side than from mine, but he had more to lose than me, obviously. I kind of came back to England and was happy to be here and carry on working. But then I went to, in 1980, I thought enough of this kind of glamour stuff. I don't want to be in high heels anymore and loads of cleavage. I don't mind a bit of it occasionally, but I've always been a jeans and a shirt and some boots person. So I went down to Ace Records, which is the top blues label then in 1980, and I said to the boss, I want to. I want to go back to what I really wanted to do. I want to do blues because I've got a slightly naughty sense of humor. I said I want to call the album Blue Job, and he said, "Well, fine, sign here." And I've been with Ace ever since because I loved the slightly naughty, risque lyrics from the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
And there was lots of it back then, boy.
Absolutely, yes. Now you probably get arrested for some of them.
Yeah. Well, some of that stuff they were doing, they were singing back then. I mean, Lucille
Shave 'em
Bogan is
dry.
one. You remember Lucille Bogan? Wow.
Yes, shave 'em dry.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, I know them all. I can do
Yeah.
so many of them. I've just bought out a new album. It's called 73 because it's actually it's my second to last album. It's because that when I recorded it, I was 73, and I finally got on it a song called My Girl's Pussy, which is from a 1931 guy called Harry Roy. Only it's done for a bit of fun. I mean, all of these songs are
Yep.
kind of fun. And then the album before that, I managed to finally, I wrote a song which I've been wanting to do for years, and it's on this album, and it's called the FCK Blues. And the reason it's called FCK is because the only thing that's missing is you. So
Yep.
you have to have a sense of humor around me, and definitely in the blues.
Oh yeah. Always there was always back then. That was the 20s and the early 1900s were crazy for that kind of music.
Yes,
Female
yes.
singers too singing it like crazy. Lots of them.
Yeah, I've always read many of the biographies of some of the poor ladies that had to sing in those days. I mean, obviously Bessie Smith, I grew up from the age of 11 listening to like crazy, but I always used to think what a tough life they had, traveling and for the voice, having to sing above all these probably pretty legless, drunken people in the audience. You had to be tough as hell to get through it.
Yeah.
And I have high admiration for them all. There's some I love more than others. I love Julia Lee and her boyfriends and Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and but there's so many great singers from those days. And I'm always happy to sing this kind of music when I'm out on the road. I'm not one of those shrieking type of Coco Taylor singers, and I can't do Etta James, and I will never do a song like I'd Rather Go Blind, which is a lot. I mean, Beth Hart does it beautifully, but I wouldn't sing that, because if I saw my guy walking down the street with another girl, I wouldn't want to be blind. I'd rather tell him to get lost and go and find another boyfriend. So I don't see why I wouldn't want to go blind. So I only sing songs that I can have fun with and
But you
believe.
you write a lot of great songs.
Well, thank you. You've heard some? Have you
Lots
enjoyed?
of them. Lots of them. I mean, I've got a lot of your records, and most of that stuff you've written is great. The songs are great that you've written.
Thank you. Well, I've always considered myself a songwriter first. And in the old days, Bowie and I used to, that was our thing, was to go and get a deal with a publisher, music publisher. But in order to get the songs to the publisher, because neither of us knew how to write the music, you had to go in there and sing it. And I would have loved to have worked in something like the Brill Building,
Hmm.
um, because I love songwriting to order. If somebody brings me a backing track and says, right, can you put a lyric and I need it by tonight? I love that challenge. I'll sit down and do it. I don't do that so much now because everyone seems to write themselves or they use AI. But that's another story.
So, what was the, 69, 70, that whole period, 68, the blues was crazily, England was wild with blues. All the bands were playing. You had Fleetwood Mac, you had Savoy Brown. I mean, you had a whole bunch of bands. I mean, Jimmy Page and the
Yeah.
Yardbirds and Eric
Jeff Beck.
Clapton. Yep, Jeff
Yes.
Beck, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. Alexis
Yeah.
Corner was around too.
Oh, he was a lovely guy and he spoke perfect German. But we had one record producer. I was very lucky. I made 4 albums with him, called Mike Vernon,
Yep.
who had a label called Blue Horizon. And he produced one of the albums with, I can't remember which of the English guys, where it's probably, I don't know, Brian Jones, Clapton, and whoever was around, with Muddy Waters. And Muddy Waters couldn't believe how he was adulated. No, I don't know if that's probably not the right word. Adored by so many people. We all considered him God almost in the blues world. And yet back in America, when he was doing gigs, he'd be lucky to pick up $25. It was, he came to England and Mike Vernon organized these recording sessions. So all the guys like Fleetwood Mac, all these guys were friends of mine. Sadly, so many of them are dead now, but the ones that are still living, it's pretty good. And when you have blues in your soul, it keeps you going through cold
Yep.
nights.
I got an Eric Clapton question for you. You mentioned him. Have you ever, since he said he was going to give you a guitar lesson, have you ever said that to him, told him that?
No, sadly, I've never seen him. The nearest I got to see him, he used to do concerts every January in this marvelous place we have in London called the Albert Hall. And I went along to see one of the concerts, but no, I never, I never got to see him myself. And in those days, in the sort of early 80s, we used to have a thing called the Stars of Boogie Woogie, and they would be it would be a traveling show of musicians. They'd take a couple of Europeans, of which I was lucky enough to be on, and we'd go across Europe in a big coach with Joe Duskin, Big J McNeely. There's so many names. I must be getting senile. I can't remember them all. Katie Webster, Little Willie Littlefield. A lot of these guys, they'd come to Europe and be treated like mega stars. And I do remember we went over the Alps one time and they'd never seen snow because, I mean, they're down, some of them from Mississippi, and they all leapt out and rolled in the snow. But I was so lucky to have this kind of music going on every night. And Sippy Wallace, a great singer. All these great ladies that were out doing it and just getting on with it, but getting older too. So I did an album of duets with this Big J McNeely, who started playing saxophone. He first started honking his horn in 1949, which the year I was born. But what an honor to be up on stage and doing duets with him. You know, it was blues music. There's no color bar. Nobody could care whether you're
Nope.
pink, purple, black, or green, as long as you're good at what you do.
Yep.
And I just had a ball because I'm good at what I do, and B, I get on well with people because I'm quite congenial and a happy person. So to be out on these package tours, which they don't do anymore, sadly, they were a whole lot of fun.
Let's talk about the Mustique Blues Festival. You started that, right?
Yeah, I've been going to the island of Mustique since 1970. This was before I had, got was doing Jesus Christ Superstar, and I used to go there because I had a damaged knee. And if you go to the West Indies and you walk on sand, your knee gets better. And I've been caught in an avalanche. I nearly died when I was 15. I was in the British junior seconds in the snow ski team. And I was British junior water ski champion for 4 years in the 60s. Anyway, so with my damaged knee, I got to know this island pretty well. And I went to school with the sister of the owner of the island, a man called Lord Glenconner. And I went there in 1970 and I just loved the island. And then 31 years ago, I was there and I said to the guy who owned the main bar, Basil's bar, I said, listen, you've got this great place. You like blues. I'm a blues singer. Let me find musicians and let's put a festival together and let's make it a charity thing, because Basil had started a charity to help children on the next island who had no money. And from a small egg, it grew into, it's now been going 30 years. And we had so many great people like Joe Lewis Walker,
Hmm.
Donald Fagan from Steely Dan. We had just loads and loads of people. And every year I would make an album, a CD, and we would sell it. It ran for 15 days every year, and I would record every night and then go straight to the studios, make an album, and the sale of the album was what helped raise money for the charity. But after 20 years, various things happened, and I stepped back from it, and it still runs now. Even now, I went last year for a few days to just to check up on it, and it's going great guns. Some really great musicians. There's one particularly good English guy called Ian Siegel, who's very, very talented.
I know who he is.
Yeah, he's got a great gravelly voice. No, we've had some monsters as well as Mick Jagger. I can actually say I have recorded and produced 3 tracks for Mick Jagger, but in fact we only used 2 of them on the album because I didn't want to do Honky Tonk Woman. I didn't think it was bluesy enough, so I kept it off the album. It's a thing of taste, really.
And he lives there. He has a house there, right? In
Yeah,
Mustique.
he's got a couple of bits of land. I mean, the island itself is only a mile and a half by a mile, so it's not very big. But if you wanted to, I mean, I've been around the whole of the islands in the West Indies, and if you wanted to pick one that's more special than all the others, I'd say Mustique may well be it. But I can tell you, in 1970, there was no roads. There was about 6 or 7 houses there. Very little electricity. You could swim naked on a beach because there wasn't anyone to see you. Now you can't do any of that because there's loads of houses, there's roads, and people drive around, some of them in cars that have got air conditioning. I can't understand that. Air conditioning, why not just open the windows? Sorry, in the background you can hear a cuckoo clock
Yep.
because I collect cuckoo clocks. I've got about 9 of them, but they don't cuckoo at the same time, otherwise I'd go crazy. Yeah, so the island is pretty amazing. It's quite difficult to get onto unless you're absolutely loaded. So Bowie had a house. What's his name? Tommy Hilfiger, that guy who does something to do with clothes. Not that I wear that kind of stuff. There's always somebody famous on the island. I mean, but I was too busy running the festival. So I remember one year, because I'd be sitting up checking every song had to be logged by me so that I knew exactly what song to mix once I got back to England. So I didn't want to have to sit and listen to 15 days worth of music. So I had to have it all in a notebook. And I remember one day somebody said, well, Johnny Depp was here. Well, I didn't see him. I probably wouldn't have noticed him anyway. But we had our Princess Margaret, the sister of the Queen, and she was quite a funny woman. She liked to come and listen to the blues. And I do have one sweet story about her if you want to hear it,
Yeah,
John.
go ahead. Go
Um,
ahead.
when the festival first started, she was sitting in the audience, and myself and the London Blues Band, which is the name of the band I work with, we were doing a song called King Size Papa, slightly naughty lyrics, of course, in my style, which was originally done by Julia Lee and her boyfriends who came from Kansas City. So I sing King Size Papa. I take the door off the hinges when my baby comes to call. And I noticed to my amazement that Princess Margaret was mouthing the words of this song. And I thought, this is very peculiar. How does she know it? Nobody knows about Julia Lee and her boyfriends. And when the gig was over, she comes around the back areas and she said, gosh, I love that King Size Papa and by Julia Lee and her boyfriends. And I said, heavens, ma'am, because you have to call them ma'am. I said, heavens, ma'am, how do you know this song? And she said, well, my father used to play it to me when I was a little girl because he was, after all, the king, which, of course, it
Wow.
was true. He was the king.
Yep.
So she loved her blues. So, and you know, even our Prince William and his now wife, Catherine, used to go to Mustique. Or I played, the band's been playing when they weren't then married, but I mean, I guess William will be the future king. And they used to dance just grooving along to the blues. Everyone loves the blues,
Oh
which I'm
yeah.
sure they love your radio show as well.
So the London Blues Band, that's been your band for quite a while now.
Yes, I suppose since kind of the 1980s, actually. Obviously, various members come and go, some die. I mean, I used to have a marvelous piano player who played in a group called the Animals, Dave Robury. He took over from Alan Price and the Animals. But, you know, so many of them are dead. And one has to remember that the music world, the blues world, the traveling world, the gigs and late nights and etc., it takes its toll on your health. So a lot of people, you know, are no longer around, which is sad. But you know,
Well,
um,
the one I know is Matt Schofield, who was in your band for a while.
well, yes, he was only 20 when he was in my band. He was in my band for about 2 years. I think the final cruncher though with Matt was because I love Indian music too, and we went off to I got some gigs in India for the whole band, and I mean he's a phenomenal player. Even at 20, he blew people's brains, especially when I could announce, you know, this kid's only 20. But he didn't really like being in India, and so sadly, it was time for him to branch out on his own. But I've been very lucky. I had, in the 70s, I had one of the world's greatest drummers, a guy called Simon Phillips.
Yep.
And he was in my band for nearly 2 years because he was in Jesus Christ Superstar, and then he left. I mean, since then he's played with Jeff Beck and Toto and
The Who. He was
everyone
in the
else.
Who for a little while. He played.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I've been really lucky to have great musicians. But Matt, I'm so happy when somebody has played in the band and then they go out and there and even be. I mean, he gets far more gigs than I do. And when you see an artist like Matt Schofield playing, maybe it's perhaps the same for Robin Ford, but definitely for Matt. Mostly it's men in the audience who are just looking at him doing his licks. You know, he's a phenomenal player. Um, and I like working with young guys because they're they're kind of blossoming, they're flourishing, and it was very clear from an early age that he was going to be
Well,
phenomenal.
you had two of them in your band. You had Evan Jenkins, the drummer, that went with him too.
Yeah, well, Evan is still in my band. My last album, which I did about a year and a half ago, which was produced or co-produced with a singer called Mark Armand from Soft Cell, and
Yep.
Evan, and so it's not blues. It's actually they're all covers except for one song that I wrote, and so Evan's on drums, and I did a Dylan song, which I've never done a Dylan song before, Not Dark Yet. And I really love that
That's a
song.
great song. People don't realize how good that song is.
Have you heard my version though,
Yes, I
John?
have. It's great.
Right. Well, I think it's really good. And I mean, Mark Arman said to me, look, why don't you do a Lana Del Rey song? Well, that would have been the last thing on my mind. He might as well have said to me, why don't I do a Sabrina Carpenter song, which I would be happy to do too. But this Lana Del Rey song is called Gods and Monsters. The trouble is there's a swear word in most verses, and you won't get played on the BBC if you've got a four-letter word beginning with
Right.
F. So, but I don't mind on the record, So Evan is one of the greatest drummers that I know. He's great to work with. I mean, and I've always loved drummers because of being what I considered a drummer myself when I was 12 and 13. And I was very lucky because I had a drum teacher who was very friendly with Buddy Rich. So I was 13 and my teacher would take me to all the Buddy Rich shows or the rehearsals. So I got to see Buddy up close and personal many, many times. And then I realized, of course, I'm never going to be as good as Buddy. So I realized that singing was kind of more my thing.
But
But
every
I love drummers, because if you've got a bad drummer, if a band is only as good as his drummer, if the drummer's bad, no matter how good everyone else is, it just falls to pieces.
and you've always had great musicians. I mean, every recording with the London blues bands you've had some top-notch people always, always, from what I can hear. Keyboard player too. You had a
Well, I
great keyboard player.
yeah, which one? Which album?
During experienced, I think
Well,
is the one.
that could have been Dino Baptiste.
Yeah, that's who it
Could
is.
have.
Yep.
Yeah, no, he's another one who's got a birthday on the same day as me, the 30th of March. And he's been playing with me now since 1997, because when Dave Robury from the Animals kind of died, I knew that it's really hard to find great keyboard players or piano players, boogie woogie players. Young people tend to play this electronic stuff, but you don't have the action. You don't have the strength in your fingers. Um, I know quite a lot of boogie players in Germany and Austria and even Switzerland, but very few in England. The young people just want to make instant sounds, which you can get with your electronic machinery. But Dino Baptiste is amazing, and he's been with me since 1997. And literally, the first gig he ever did with me was when Dylan asked me to be the supporting act when he was touring Britain. So he literally leapt straight into doing the Dylan tour, which was quite nice.
What
And
year
he's
was
a lovely guy.
what year was that?
1997.
So you opened for
Uh,
Dylan in England,
yeah, yeah, Britain actually.
Britain.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah, that was nice because I knew him from nine. It's all in the book, John. You've not read
I've
my
read
memoirs.
I've read some of it, not all of it. I haven't had a chance to read it all.
Shame on you. Shame on you. But anyway, no, I knew him, Dylan, from 1965. I first met him in 66 when he came back with the band and upset everyone because he'd gone electric. Yes. It's good when you upset people just
Hmm.
because you're doing what you want to do. Anyway, yeah, so that was Dino Baptiste's first foray into playing with me. And whenever I get a chance, and I've done a lot of blues concerts in India, because I love India, I always make sure that I have really good musicians when I go there, because it's an honor to play in a country like that. I mean, it's much more techno now than it used to be, but in the old days, we were playing in places where they'd never ever heard blues before, and it's an honor for me to be able to explain about blues being the mother of all Western music. And Indian music, also not written down, has to come from the heart. It's all from feeling. And
Yep.
so that's like blues too.
And you're exposing them to something they've never heard before, which is good.
Well, yes, but now everybody's heard everything. I can't. The only exposure that young people probably look at nowadays is porn on the old screens. I see 2-year-olds staring at screens. I don't get it, but I'm old school, so I don't have to live in that world.
So you did a revised version of Andy Warhol this year.
Yes, well, that's what I recorded it live at the Temple of Art and Music, and it came out as a double album on this album called 73, which is not very easy to get. Um, these days, where are the record stores these days? There's very few
Gone.
of them,
They're gone.
and they're all gone, and I don't do anything online. I intend to stay a rebel for the rest of my life, actually. So Andy Warhol. Yeah, did you see it? If you punch in on the screen and you punch in onto YouTube and you put Andy Warhol Bowie's 78th birthday or something, and
Right.
my name, obviously,
Yep.
then you'll see it, lots of dancers and colours. Is that the one you're referring
Yeah,
to?
it was on your website for a little while.
Right, yes.
The link to it.
Well, yeah, well, of course, I have a friend who puts all this stuff up on for me. I don't myself touch machinery, and I intend to keep it that way. But it's, I was, again, as I said, it was an honor to do a Bowie song. His songs aren't very easy to do. He's not really known for writing love songs, although some. I did do this version of his song "Can You Hear Me," but I couldn't sing Life on Mars, for example. I mean, it's got nothing to do with me. He could get away with it because he looked a bit like an alien. But the Andy Warhol song is something that I've kind of grown to like more and more as time goes by. And there's a label in England called Cherry Red, and they bought out all my main man recordings and they put it in a box set. And there are 3 different versions of Andy Warhol, and there's one with just Bowie playing guitar and me singing, and maybe it's Mick Ronson, the guitarist, on bass. I can't remember actually, but it's a weird song. I've, I kept thinking, why is he given this song to me? But he publicly did, and he announced it on a radio show that we were doing called the John Peel Show, and so I'm very, what can I say, honored that he gave me a song.
So, how many gigs a year do you do right now at this age now? With
Well, I probably should be giving up, but no, it varies. I work a lot in places like Austria, Switzerland, or wherever, or Italy, wherever anyone's mad enough. I just come back from Denmark and Poland and Austria. It's a bit. I'm not sure actually how many. I mean, and I always make time off to go for a month, usually in November, December, to India. So I take care to have little breaks. But I mean, I'm a fanatic. And when I do these gigs, let's say in Vienna, there's a great club there called Jazzland. It's 3 sets a night. And okay, nowadays I might have a tall stool sitting behind me to sit on to occasionally. But I like up and grooving around and dancing to the music as it goes. And it's a lot of fun. So while I can still do that, I'll still keep doing gigs. I think it's quite difficult though for a lot of people to do, us Brits to do gigs in America. You've got this blasted work visas,
Mhm.
and so I understand why American promoters aren't that interested in bringing English acts over. But uh, so I'll keep doing it. I'll bop till I drop.
There you go.
Yes.
So, how do people find out about you and your music? You have a website.
Well, I've got a website, but actually they're much better off just punching in Dana Gillespie on YouTube or going on. I've got a Facebook thing that I do as well. Um, and I've got a couple of series that are going on YouTube. One is called Globetrotting with Gillespie. And whenever I find anyone interesting to interview, like Nick Mason, the drummer of Pink Floyd, or Tim Rice, who wrote Jesus Christ Superstar, or somebody interesting, I interview them and then it goes out on the YouTube thing. So you can either have Globetrotting with Gillespie, then I've got another one called Around My World in 60 Songs. I think we've only got up to about number 13. So I've got a little, I hope I live long enough to get the rest of the world of songs in. And then I've been doing another one. This is all on YouTube, called Around My World in 80 Pools, as in swimming pools. I do a lot of swimming and water aerobics. So wherever I am in the world, if I find an exotic and lovely, or sometimes not so lovely swimming pool, I'm in there and I'm talking to people, and sometimes finishing off my talk with a bit of music.
Well, that's
So
good.
there's a lot on YouTube.
And you're taking your radio days and using it to do the interviews, which is good.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
How well, I'm so pleased to be on your radio show.
I'm so
You
pleased to have you. I mean, it's the first time I've ever had a chance to talk to you, and I'm glad that Conrad was able to connect us.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to ask me?
Um, where do you see yourself in the next couple years? And
Well,
anything new you're gonna thinking about doing?
well, probably if I'm not pushing up daisies, as we say in England, for being dead. Well, I guess just more of the same recording, actually. I mean, I love to record. I love being in studios. I've always been a studio person. I'll just keep doing studios and gigs for as long as I can do them. And if somebody's mad enough, they track me down and say, "Hey, can you do a gig somewhere?" And if it's a nice place, or even if it's a nasty place. I mean, I've done about 10 years ago, I was doing loads of concerts all over Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Estonia, Hungary, Poland, Lithuania. Did them all, love them all. So also did Mark Armand, but that's another story. So I've done lots of. I just love traveling, and if anyone's nuts enough to say, "Come on, Dana, do you want to do a gig in?" I can't think of where, somewhere completely off the wall. If I can get there and it's interesting and the musicians are free, I'll go and do it. So
There you go.
unless I'm pushing up daisies or I'm carried off stage in my wooden overcoat,
Here's
which
my
mes-
here's my wish: another live album like the last one you did.
um, what you mean? Which one? But you haven't got the 73, have you?
I haven't gotten 73. No.
But you've got the one with Mark Armand. That was the
Yep.
one.
Yep.
Yeah. 73 is live. It's a double live album, but it's quite hard to track down, unfortunately. I don't know.
I'll
I think
track it down one way or the other. Watch, you
when
watch. I'll
you
track
get
it
it
down.
online, which is a world I don't go near, but other people around me do. Are you Mr. Techno, John?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Right. Well, I'm not really. I can't be bothered. I'd rather eat chocolate.
Well, Donna, thank you very, very much for taking some time out of your busy day.
And
And best
and
of
are you
luck.
gonna
Huh?
are you gonna play a track of mine now?
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you know which one yet, or you haven't thought about it
I
yet?
I haven't thought there's so many great tracks for me to play. I'll
All
have to
right.
I'll have to think about that.
Well, keep playing it, because I'm happy to know that somebody at least listens to my music.
Oh
Then
yeah.
my life won't have been in vain.
No, it's not in vain. Keep doing it.
I will indeed.
Thank you again.
Thanks, John, and send my best to Conrad.
I will. Thank you.
And, all right. Goodbye and
Bye
peace and
bye.
love and five-star hotels, as we say in England.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.